Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. I'm your host, Chris Salem. Hope everyone is having a great week. Again, you found us here at the TALRadio platform at talradio.org. Again, we hope that you're enjoying many of the great content across many different subject areas here on the TALRadio platform. We've been here ourselves now for over 4 years. It's hard to believe. We want to thank you, the listeners that have been with us for that time. And again, we are committed to bringing in subject matter experts, sharing their words of wisdom and insights to help raise your level of influence for you and your business to the next level. We will also encourage everybody that watches this show to also follow us on Spotify, Apple, and now also YouTube with our video portion of the show. You could also listen there, and we highly encourage you to do that. Our show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. You get to generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with. If you'd like more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about becoming your own iconoclast. We're here with our subject matter expert, Kristina DiPalo. She is a speaker, leadership luminary, breaker of icons. She has enjoyed a varied and successful career in corporate communications that led to a varied and successful career as a consultant. She worked in the financial services and biopharma for 2 decades before coming out on her own over a decade ago. Over that time, she evolved her focus from strategic communications to keynote speaking and leadership coaching. An extraordinary opportunity to participate in a multi-month intensive program to become a leadership coach connected her to new work and, more importantly, a deeper, more intuitive way of serving others. And today, as I mentioned, she works with professionals who want to evolve, who want to challenge themselves and their career trajectories, that she has helped scores of people discover how to manage change with confidence and grace. And without further ado, we welcome Kristina DiPalo to the show. Kristina, how are you doing today?
I'm really good, Chris. I'm really good. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this great show.
We would love to. And let's dive into it. The people, you're a breaker of icons. And so, let's first define what iconoclast is, because some people might say, okay, I know what that is. Or some people might assume what that is, but they may not know the formal definition. So giving some context around that, I believe will set the stage in how people can become their own iconoclast.
Absolutely. It's a great place to start. If you think about the word icon, which is derived from ancient Greek, icon actually is the original word. An icon's a representation of something, right? Whether that's a representation of values or attributes or ways of being. People that we call icons represent something to us. Even if we think about, in our technology-laden age of an icon on a phone, right? It's a shortcut to meaning in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
An iconoclast is someone who is willing to break that icon, to kind of recognize that maybe what that representation is, what that person is, what that way of being is, those beliefs are not really working anymore. They're not aligning well to their original intention. There's a gap between what they really were meant to be and how they're currently operating. So the iconoclast is the very brave person who sees that and is willing to break that icon apart to start anew.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And when you think about that, what would be the importance of, doing this for someone, becoming their own? Because I think we live in a world where, there's a lot of people that want to be somebody else or follow. They don't become their own authentic self in many ways. And I know for myself, I was miserable for the first 31 years of my life because I tried to become somebody I wasn't. And that's all I knew at that point until I realized that I could be who I was and be okay with my strengths and my weaknesses and what I was good at, what I wasn't, and so on. If you could share some insights, or even if it's anything from people you worked with, personal experience, anything that I feel the audience would greatly benefit from.
It's interesting you mentioned your own experience, because I think that a lot of people experience that.
Yeah.
When we're young and we have that opportunity to kind of break away from our family group or our community or how we have been defined by others, it's a golden time to be creative and to look outside of, our own four walls and see people whose characteristics, whose ambitions, whose goals we want to kind of take on for our own. And it can be a very rich time, a scary time in some ways, right? Because you don't know if you're going to get it right at first, but a very fertile and rich time for us to define ourselves. And we kind of have that sense of, okay, this is who I am. This is how I want to show up. And then life happens. And we start to make compromises. We start to diverge a little bit. We start to try and fit what, the current crises or the needs are at that moment. And when you talk about something like a midlife crisis, which sounds very, very dramatic, but, you can say it's a midlife reshuffling, we kind of realize that we have diverged from that definition of ourselves that feels right? That we feel in our bones is who we really are. And we hit that watershed moment. Sometimes, for a lot of career professionals, it's when it's imposed upon you, right? Mm-hmm. Your company's gone through a major restructuring, or the entrepreneurial business that you've created is not living up to what you hoped it was, or you've got to do a major shift. And at that point, we can feel really unmoored and start to feel irrelevant and obsolete, which are frightening things to feel.
Yeah.
It's at that moment that becoming an iconoclast is really critical, because you have an opportunity to kind of break that definition that you've shifted into and pick up the pieces and look at, well, really, what did I set out? Who did I set out to be? How did I set out to live? What still is true, and what can I just start to say goodbye to?
Yeah.
Right? This is an opportunity for me to redefine myself rather than chasing what someone else's next definition of where I should be. And, I've experienced a couple of watershed moments myself when I left, that cocoon of corporate, and I went out on my own. And a lot less, I think, than you think at that moment, because going out on your own requires a very different mindset. It can be really thrilling and exciting, but it also requires a lot too. So that's a watershed moment where I had to say, gee, I've been defining myself in a certain way for a long time. I've kind of diverged from those senses of myself that I had when I was young and I was clearer about myself. What do I have to do to bring that back? Because that's going to serve me. That's just sort of one example. And I think also, let me retract. I know from the consulting work that I've done with companies over time, companies lose their way as well. Yeah. Large ones, small ones. They're very clear about who they are at the outset. And they try and redefine themselves with a vision or a mission and go through these great exercises. But it's really going back to the essence of, what are we really about? How do we want to serve our customers? Who are we as an entity? And how much have we drifted away from that? And do we need to kind of break where we are right now to get back to the heart of what we're really about?
Yeah. Wow. Love that. Love that, what you shared. And I hope listeners that you got some great value from there, because this is so important. What would you share, somebody listening right now, if they're taking that first step, looking at this right now, how would that look like? What would you be advising them? Nothing proprietary, because we want to make sure we protect your process, but anything that you feel like you'd like to share.
Well, first is, if you're in that wobbly period where you know that something is off, sit with that for a little bit. Right? There's no need to rush to have the answer, because the odds are you're going to try and pull an answer from somewhere outside, right? There is never a dearth of people who are out there who have the solution, right? The 5-step solution or things like that. So but that's really not what you need. It's that recognition that I am off. Who I am at work, who I am at home, the direction I'm heading in is off from what I really know myself to be and what I intended to be. And think about, well, what were those things that I had intended to be? What still is true? Where have I gone off course?
Yeah.
That piece is really, that's the critical first step of just sitting with that and giving yourself the grace to figure out where you're off course.
Wow. Love that. Great information, what you shared there. And so valuable. Like, in terms of this process, is there, I mean, again, I never believe in any cookie cutter processes, and I'm sure it varies for person to person, business to business. But, what would somebody like, that's looking, again, to become their own iconoclast, like what would that look like, based upon, I guess it would be what they're trying to accomplish, what, maybe that type of thing. If you could share some insights to that.
Well, when I went out on my own, for example, I knew that I was bringing with me a lot of skills and a lot of capabilities that I had garnered over the years, but things that I just loved doing, that I was good at, that I was able to kind of build up again and again. But there were certain things, it's kind of nice being in the corporate bosom. And, if you need resources, you kind of fight for them a little bit and then boom, they're there. So I had to rethink, what does it mean for me to be really effective at what I do with all of those skills that I had in this very different environment? And so I literally sat down and thought about, how do I redefine who and where I am? Now, I did that on my own. I didn't do that with the help of a coach. I didn't do that with the help of a business mentor. So it took a little bit extra time for me to do that. But that was my watershed moment, that realization that I have to become a little bit more responsible for these things in order for me to really live out, okay, I love working with companies. I love helping them create the right story. All of those things that I did when I first went out on my own as a consultant. So I had to think, what's the wraparound for me to be able to deliver that?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Such a valuable information here with that. And, and when you now can start embarking on a strategy to be, creating your own iconoclast, that will also, helps with raising your level of influence, and this is what this show is all about in terms of influence. Influence is we're not out to persuade or convince people or, tell them what they should believe in, that this is better for you. It's always to encourage, to empower, to influence them to decide what's best for them. And so if you could share anything about from the Iconoclast platform or strategy and how that relates to influence, would be fantastic.
Well, a lot of it comes back to, you mentioned earlier on, Chris, about being authentic. Yeah. A lot of it comes back to, is the work that you're doing and the way that you're doing it in alignment with where your greatest strengths are, with who you know yourself to be. So I want to call something out, which I think most people don't think of themselves in this way. But when I think about the concept of an icon, right, we tend to think that, it's that person that you put up on the pedestal. It's the celebrity. It's the world leader. It's, the CEO, the mega CEO. But each one of us, when we're out in the world, when we're operating, even within our family structures, we are representing things, right? We are known for certain things. We are each, in a sense, operating as an icon for somebody else.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about yourself in those terms, then you give yourself a framework to become clear about, well, what is my icon showing, right? What am I representing to others? Am I representing an entrepreneur who always delivers on time and always delivers with the highest quality? Or am I representing someone who is a fabulous listener and who knows how to maneuver through an organization to get things done? Or am I representing things that, maybe I'm not really aware of, and I don't really like? But when you start thinking about yourself as I'm representing certain things in the marketplace, if you just talk about it from a business perspective, do I even understand what those things are? And are those things really those attributes and characteristics that I want to be known for? When you have a sense of that, well, then you can then go inside and say, well, I want to break 2 or 3 of these attributes, because you know what? That's really not the way that I want to show up. That's not who I want to be working with my clients or building my business or becoming an influencer. And the more then that you're aligned with what you want to be, then you're influencing through what you represent in the best possible way, in the way that you want to be able to influence.
Yeah, well put. And I love that. And I hope everybody share, because this show is about influence and how to really, when you can influence your audience to do something that they've been afraid to do, or do something that's going to help them to grow. Obviously, that's going to impact your brand, and that's what we're all about. And I love what you shared, because it's so aligned with what we do here at Business Influencers. So thank you for sharing that. As we get towards the end of this show, and I want to make sure there's room for us to share about where people can find you. Anything else that you would like to share, Kristina, that kind of like just sums up everything? We want to bring you back on a future show to kind of continue on this topic. And we also have another show that I do that it's longer that we'll have you on. We'll be able to do a deeper dive into it over a period of time. Anything else that you want to connect the dots around this topic that you feel are necessary for people to look at if they're serious about, developing their iconoclast?
The 2 characteristics that I would say are most important, or the 2 things to be aware of, is, deciding to shake things up and make sure that the work that you're doing, the way that you're showing up with your clients, the way that you're leading your people lines up with who you really are and who you want to be. That's an act of courage. And it's also an act of faith. Because when you decide that you want to cleave off certain ways that you've been acting that don't really line up with who you know yourself to be and how you want to move in the world, you're not quite sure where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
You definitely, I can say this with my own high level of faith, you definitely wind up moving away from feeling irrelevant or obsolete or stale or brittle, right? I've been doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm getting diminishing returns. But I'm going to keep riding this thing out because that's all I know. That's where the courage comes in. The faith comes in with, well, now I'm not quite sure where this is going to end up. How do I become creative again with that same kind of joyfulness that I had years and years ago when everything felt like an open field? So it's those 2 things, right? Embracing the courage, embracing the faith, to be able to get yourself to your next fertile and productive and really kind of juicy period of your work.
Love it. I'm looking forward to having you on a future show, and I want to thank you for this information in this short period of time. When you pack so much valuable insight for us here at TALRadio and Touch Your Life Foundation, including obviously most important our audience. How can the audience, get to know you better? How can they find you? What are you up to? And anything you'd like to share with them?
Well, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, Kristina DiPalo. There really aren't many other Kristina DiPalos out there. And as you'll know from the show notes, my first name is spelled with a K. You can find me on Instagram, same thing. I have to, confess, Chris, that I have not really used Instagram that much. I'm more, like I scroll and I look at, funny,
I'm a LinkedIn
funny
guy
things that come up.
You and I are similar. We're on Instagram, but it's not my favorite. One of my favorites.
Exactly. Although, I'm getting much more comfortable with it. I'm doing more of that. And then also, I recently refreshed my website, KristinaDiPalo.com. And I'm launching a newsletter in early September.
And we want to make sure everybody takes advantage. Reach out to Kristina. If you do reach out to us, we'll also make sure to connect you with her. That information will also be in the show notes. And again, take advantage of this. This is an opportunity that can really align with your influence strategy, and have Kristina, who's been doing this, understands it. Let her see if, she can reach, talk to you and perhaps help you in what you're doing, whether if you're an individual or an organization. This is a great opportunity for you to take advantage of this. Thank you so much again, Kristina, for being here and taking time out of your schedule to be with us.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed to bringing in subject matter experts like Kristina in each and every week to help elevate you and your level of influence to the next level, including your business. Till then, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you here next week at the same time. Take care.